Have you ever found yourself questioning the power of community? Or have you ever asked yourself whether live events still have the same impact they once did? I know I've had these thoughts run through my head, but I will be the first to admit how wrong I was for thinking negative on those things. Because this past weekend at the 2025 Empowered Podcasting Conference, I got to witness the power and strength of community and the power of live events unfold before my very eyes. Today, I'm going to do my best to recap everything I saw at the 2025 Empowered Podcasting Conference. It's time to blow this up.
Let's blow this up.
All right, Bomb Squad, we are back and better than ever. It is a special bonus episode of Let's Blow This Up. I'm your host, Jason Sircone. Today, I'm going to try to do justice by providing as much feedback on the unbelievable weekend that I just spent in Charlotte. Actually, for me, it was 10 days in North Carolina. But wow, what a way to cap things off. The 2025 Empowered Podcasting Conference just went down. It's the second installment of this event. And man, do we have something special on our hands. So like I said, I want to try to give a recap and tell you a little bit about this event. If you've never heard of Empowered Podcasting, not just the conference, but the community itself. As I said in the lead in here, the community was on fire this weekend. And I think it really speaks to the power of what podcasting is all about. Now, I'm standing here, I'm recording this episode one day after International Podcast Day. I celebrate privately. Actually, it was the last day of September, and I had been in full go mode from the beginning of the month all the way through yesterday. And I needed that day to recharge, to get myself back into a more energetic mode, because I don't know what it was. I think it was just coming down off of that high of being around so many impactful people for the weekend. And not just that, just the energy that I felt while being in Charlotte for all those days. It was just a day. I tried to move. I tried to do things. I wanted to do some stuff for International Podcast Day. I was just like, I can't. I could hardly get myself up. And I felt like creating content just for the sake of it. What's the point of that? So took the day to recharge. Here I am back on the microphone, knocking the dust off here on Let's Blow This Up, because I'm getting ready to roll out a couple new series in the near future here before the end of 2025. I figured what better way to get things back in motion than to talk about the unbelievable conference that I not only had the pleasure of attending, but I had the pleasure of help put together. And that's really a big thing for me that I want to talk about, because we're going to get to all this, but I'll just say planning an event, if you've never done it, extremely stressful. Always feels like you're putting out fires. Always feels like there's a new thing, a new solution, a new problem, a new person asking a question, all these things. But you handle it. You do everything you can to put on the best possible event for the people that are going to attend. And the feedback we've gotten so far says that we did our job. So I'm going to dive into this more in detail here, but more so, I want to talk about what I experienced and what you'll experience when you attend this event again. And if you were in attendance as you take in this podcast, I hope we got a chance to hang out, have a drink, break bread, talk podcasting, or overall just be in the presence of such just awesomeness. Is there a better word for it? There was just so much happening in these rooms and in the hallways, and the conversations that were pouring out, and just the overall camaraderie. There's a lot of layers to the podcast world, and I think we saw a lot of it on display this past weekend. So if you're unfamiliar, Empowered Podcasting is more than just a conference. This is a movement started by Mark Ronick. And if you're not familiar with who Mark is, go back in the archives here on Let's Blow This Up. He's on several different episodes with me. Good friend of mine that I met about 4 years ago at Podcast Movement. And he had a vision for a new kind of conference. And We know there are conferences and events all over the place. But what Mark envisioned was something that was a little bit more intimate, something that was a little bit smaller, something where people that attend would have more access to the speakers on stage. You know, at a lot of big events, when a speaker gets on stage, they do their part, they provide great impact, they put on a great presentation or a great keynote, but getting an opportunity to talk to them afterwards is sometimes very difficult. If they do hang around, usually they're just bombarded by people, so you may not get a chance to talk to them one-on-one. But in a lot of cases, they just vanish backstage, never to be seen again. But at this event, speakers were part of the festivities from start to finish. Not only were they on stage, they were in the hallways. They were accessible to everybody. They were at the happy hour. They were at lunch. They were at the after party. They were all over the place. And that to me symbolizes how powerful this movement has become. And you could see how that impacted everyone in attendance because they had that opportunity to learn more. It wasn't just a 30-minute presentation. Everything that they took in stemmed so far beyond just 30 minutes on a stage. And I think the speakers felt like they had more of an intimate opportunity to connect with other podcasters because, after all, isn't that what it's all about? You know, I said in the lead into the show that sometimes I question live events these days. The reason why I question it is because we live in a world we are instantly connected to somebody via the internet. So whether we listen to their podcast or we connect with them on social media or we follow a Twitter feed or a Threads feed or we watch their videos or we're on their email newsletter, whatever the case may be, if we want information from somebody, there's really not a lot of barriers that keep us from it. Think about this. There's so many ways to connect digitally that sometimes we think, why would I need to go to a live event when I have access to these people right here? Now, I'll say I had those thoughts, and I'll never have them again after watching what I saw this weekend. The internet can advance and innovate and take us further than we'll ever be able to imagine and fathom in our minds. But we're never, ever going to be able to duplicate human interaction. That one-on-one, that ability to shake hands, to hug each other, to high five, to fist bump, to sit across a table from someone and pick their brain, let them pick your brain, interact, share ideas, argue, disagree on things, but ultimately be so passionate about what they care about that having a computer screen in front of us and a little camera that we stare to as we talk to these people can be good. But being across the table right next to a person, that's never going to go away. And the power of that will never diminish. So I will be the first to admit, I looked at that wrong. And I'll never do it again. Getting back to empowered podcasting, a huge extension of this community is what Mark Ronick does every morning on Clubhouse. 7 a.m., daily podcast, hour-long show, talking about all aspects of podcasting. Do you know how much work goes into doing that and showing up every day for your community? It's huge. And that has stemmed and extended into everything we see within empowered podcasting. And I know Mark wanted to create something that was a little bit different, a little bit smaller, that intimate atmosphere. It started in those morning chats, podcasting morning chat, every morning live, 7 a.m. on Clubhouse. Remember Clubhouse? This guy's kept it relevant. Clubhouse still has purpose and meaning because Mark uses it to record his podcast, and it gives everyone an opportunity to join the conversation. There's several co-hosts in that room. There's people that join in that get to come on stage and share their thoughts. So every day, new perspectives get shared. I've been a part of that show many times, and I'll be honest, I'd be a part of it every day if it wasn't at 7 a.m. I am not in the 5 a.m. club, and I don't think I will be. I know I'm probably in about the 6:30, 7 a.m. club, but I know if I don't go to the gym in the morning at that time, I won't go at all. So I try to get there when I can, but the overall point is this community has taken a whole new leap forward after this past weekend. So I will share a little bit about the event planning process and putting this together. My role within our community, within the internal planning committee, we'll call it, was speaker consigliere. That was the Italian side of me. I just watched The Godfather and felt this was a great term for me. What that meant was I had the primary role of picking the speakers, communicating with the speakers so everyone was on the same page and knew exactly what we wanted to accomplish with the event, and programming them in a way that allowed all attendees to enjoy the show, pick and choose where they'd want to go. But I wasn't trying to program things like two AI presentations against one another. That's not fair, because if that's something you want to learn more about, chances are you want to attend all of the AI presentations. So I try to program all these different things in a way to where each person speaking was talking about a different subject, and then you could attend the presentation you felt was going to bring you the most impact. I know in talking to the speakers that they absolutely loved how things were put together. They were extremely happy with the crowds and the audiences they had to speak to. And I will say, having been there in year one as a panelist and more or less an attendee, I wasn't on the planning committee there, I saw some things that I felt, if we were to run this back, if we were to do year two, there's probably a few improvements we could do to make it a better experience for everyone in attendance. So when I went to Mark and said, I'd like to be a part of this, I went all in. And that's just me. I love going all in on these things, because to me, if I'm going to sign up for something, it deserves 100% of everything that I can offer it. Sometimes that might get looked down on. Sometimes that may get underappreciated. I don't give a shit. This is not about recognition for me. This is all about building something that others get to experience. And yes, along the way, when you're planning an event, lots of things come up that make you question whether you made the right decision to be involved. And there's no question, there were sessions where we were bitching about one thing or complaining about another, but at the end of the day, that's necessary, because the grand purpose, everything that we're driving for, needs to stay in focus. And if you can blow out that steam and still come back to that purpose knowing you're doing something special, then you know you're going to be able to carry this out to the end. And that's what we experienced within our little planning group. I know going into this weekend that I felt like that was it for me. I wanted to bring something special to life. I wanted to be a part of it. Mission accomplished. But as I watched everything unfold, and as I participated with my fellow podcasters and fellow podcast professionals, boy, did I have a new sense of appreciation for what we had built. And I knew right then and there that it wasn't over for me. I wanted to keep building on this whole thing that has started. Because I can say, having now been there for year one and year two, the jump forward, just seeing how it changed and how it evolved from year one to year two, I can't friggin' wait for what year three brings. And I know there's a lot of people out there that were at that show. You might be listening to my words right now that were saying the exact same thing at this event. And they're still probably saying that as things have wrapped up. But I'm going to get to this in a minute. Things have not wrapped up. This is still going, and it's freaking incredible. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a second. But I want to share a couple stories. This is fun stuff. When I knew I was coming down to Charlotte, I made a post on LinkedIn as like an open call to any other people in Charlotte that might want to meet up for a cup of coffee and just talk, whether it was about business, about podcasting. Mainly, I was looking for people in Charlotte that could sell me more on why I need to move to Charlotte. And that's something that I've been contemplating for many months now. And I'll talk about that in another episode down the road. But I was using my week in Charlotte to sell myself more. And who better than people in Charlotte to help push that sale forward? So I put this post out, not expecting a lot, because sometimes maybe that's just weird, right? Like some guys, hey, this guy just wants to randomly get together. No idea who it is. But if you take all the creepiness out of it and just think about it from a pure business building standpoint, I think my request held some water. But nevertheless, I had one person interact with that post who I reached out to, and her name's Amelia. I'm happy to say that Amelia and I are now good friends. Just from that one interaction where we got to get together, and it was hilarious because we met for coffee, and it was almost like one of those first date scenarios. She didn't know who I was. She probably, when we were wrapping up our meeting, I even said to her, did you have somebody on standby in case I was a goofball that you could have texted for an emergency call to get out of this situation? Fortunately, that didn't happen. And Amelia is an aspiring new podcaster who we had a great conversation about podcasting, using it to build a coaching business, using it to establish yourself as an authority in your space. And Amelia is going to be onto something special. But what was really cool in learning her story and where she's at is that she would have been a perfect attendee for the conference, and she didn't even know it was a thing. I'll go backwards one, but I think she said she had seen something about it, but didn't really pay it much mind. But either way, I gave her the information about the event and said, I hope you can come. And after, I think it was the next day, we had a person who had bought a ticket who unfortunately couldn't join us be generous enough to donate that ticket to somebody else to come to the event. I said to Mark, I've got the perfect person. Amelia would fit this ticket 100%. So I sent her a text. Bada bing, bada boom. She's got the ticket. She's in the house, and she got to experience everything the event had. And it was thanks to the generosity of another community member that she got to do that. So she had nothing to lose by joining us in that room. And she got to build new friendships. She got to enhance her knowledge base on podcasting. And at the end of the day, she is now a part of this community as well. That's huge. And if not for the generosity of that person who unfortunately couldn't join us, maybe she wouldn't have got to experience all of this past weekend. I know she told me she had in her mind maybe she would come next year because it was such short notice. But again, you get that gift, it's kind of hard to pass it up, right? So she got to come and she got to experience everything we had. And that's one more person that's part of this community that gets to enjoy everything that we're doing and be a part of how this community continues to evolve. That was just something I thought was really, really cool. Another thing for me, with being in Charlotte, just feeling the energy and being around people that are thinking like me in regards to building the business, building podcasts, building a business around podcasts, or using podcasts as a vehicle to get to the next level. I felt like that was what my whole week was. I think a big part of that was I spent a few days crashing with my friends Matt and Megan Shields at their place. And if you don't know them, they're also here in the archives of Let's Blow This Up. They're the founders of Chime House Media. They've become some of my closest friends. And I'll tell you, just the sheer amount of knowledge I feel like I always get just being around them. Whenever we start talking shop, that's so hard to duplicate. Man, I'll tell you, it was one of those feelings. It was hitting me throughout the week that this is something that if this is part of my life every day, I'd be light years ahead of where I am today. And I felt that being with them. They took me some places for dinner and just to hang out, and we did some co-working. All of that just led to new ideas that I could pour into Bombtrack Media, to pour into Let's Blow This Up, to pour into the new podcast that I'm going to launch, which I'll get to in a second. But overall, this whole trip, including the Empowered Podcasting Conference, just furthered my belief that Charlotte, North Carolina is where I need to be next. And that's something that I'm going to hope to build on here over the next few months. And I'll keep you posted on where that goes. But overall, that week in Charlotte for me capped off with the conference. I couldn't ask for a better week. And as I drove home on the 29th, on Monday, just sitting back in the car, actually put music on for this trip. Normally I put on podcasts or audiobooks, but this drive home, I wanted some music just so I could sit back and reflect on everything that had happened. And man, I'll tell you, just that drive home, I almost whipped the car around 2 or 3 times. Let's go back. We'll send for my things. But I think it speaks very, very strongly to the community that's being built around this conference, around podcasting as a whole. But I look at Charlotte as the next big place for me. Maybe it's the next big place for you. Who knows? And if it is, let's connect for a cup of coffee, because as Amelia will testify to, I am not a weirdo. Or maybe I am. But you can find out for yourself. So big takeaways from the event itself. As I said, I'm going to lead with this. As I said a few moments ago, yes, it ended Sunday morning with our brunch, but it has not ended yet. And this is what I think is without question the coolest thing as this continues throughout this week, as I stand here and put this episode together. It's Wednesday, October 1st. Man, you guys are talking about this event. The buzz around everything that happened that's coming from the empowered podcasting community. Unbelievable. I've been tagged in so many posts, and I'm seeing the talk around social media, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, combination of it all. That to me, again, looking back on all the hard work that we put into putting this event together, seeing that type of response and continuing to see that type of response, absolutely incredible. Thank you all for that. Thank you for continuing to keep the vibes going. I don't think anybody wanted it to end, right? We all had to get back to our lives and apply all this great knowledge and all these great things and all the relationships that we've now formed and potential collaborations that came out of this event. We got to get back to executing that, right? But I think there's still a little bit of that hangover from everybody's experience in Charlotte last weekend. Huge to see that still being chattered about. And I'm very interested to see how much longer this continues. Now, as I said, I took a day of rest on International Podcast Day. I apologize if I didn't get a chance to respond to all the comments that were made with my name on it. Consider this my response, and consider this my thank you for being part of the event and for enjoying what we put together. I'm learning even more and more. And I would say I would never fully disqualified this part of this, but I know I led the show off with saying, have you ever questioned the power of community? And I think sometimes we can do that just because if we feel like things just aren't bringing enough impact in our life, we can ask ourselves, are we in the right room? Are we doing things the right way? Are we building the right relationships? But I think if you're in the right room and you're doing your part to make those strong connections, you know your community is going to help take you from A to B. And not even A to B, A to Z, all the freaking way. I'll never question the power of community. And I should say it like this: never question the power of the right community. Because you know when you're with your people, or you're with people that are going to lift you up and light you up, you know you've got something. And you know those people are not going to let you fail. I saw a lot of that this weekend. Some people maybe questioning where things were, or questioning how they were interacting and even being a part of this conference. And within a few conversations, it was a 180, a complete 180. People went from questioning why they even came. And that was a very small, I will say that was, I'm referring to one gentleman who felt like maybe he didn't make the right decision. And once we got him communicating with others and making those strong connections, 180. Happy, did it, ready to come back again. That's the power of the right community. I'm very happy he was able to turn things around and get something from the event. And overall, I think that anybody that might have been questioning community could see on full display this past weekend why we can't do that. Why community means everything. So all events, big, small, you get out of it what you put into it. If you don't make the effort to connect with others, to start conversations, to share your thoughts, to be that active part of the community, then you're going to miss out. You know, I'll call out a friend of mine, actually a guy I've known in the podcast space for several years, Phil Better or Phil Lemieux, depending on which platform you follow him on. Phil had me on his podcast several years ago, and we maintained some light connection over the years, but nothing major, just communicating on social media. And when I saw Phil's name come in as a submission to be a speaker, it was almost, I'm like, oh, cool, Phil wants to be a part of this. And we checked out what he had to offer. I'm like, yeah, let's get this guy involved. And he ended up being on my panel along with Yvonne Marchese and Karen Portnoy. We had a great panel on authentic storytelling. And I won't even drop the inside joke for those listening that were at the conference because it's so inside, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Moist. So anyway, Phil was maybe the loudest guy in the room, and I mean that in a positive way. I know his voice was used many times to make announcements because the dude's voice carries across the room. But overall, he showed how much power there is in being an active community member because he showed up, and I know he said it in one of his posts. He didn't really know what to expect, but he got off that elevator on Thursday night, and Mark and I were sitting at the bar, and I had texted Phil that we were there, and he came down. And immediately, we just all struck up a conversation. And he said it was like getting back together with high school friends. Fortunately, we didn't consume the amount of alcohol that high school friends normally do, because that might have led to a rough Friday morning. But overall, it was so cool to see him break out in that event and just own it, own the room, own the mic. Didn't know what to expect. He was flattered to be a part of it as a speaker, but he owned every second of it. And I think he walked away with so many powerful relationships from that event. That's really showing that you get out of an event what you put into it. I know I just mentioned this lightly, and it did have a little bit of a running joke to it with the word authenticity. It's a word it's become a buzzword. But I feel like even though it's a buzzword, we're never going to be able to look past it. And we shouldn't be. We should never want to, because authenticity is what is at the root of all good podcasting. It's at the root of all good business. If you don't believe in what you're building, you're never going to stay loyal to it. And it's easier to stay loyal to an authentic story, to an authentic idea, because it's yours. If you try to go beyond that, or you try to go outside of those parameters and you're trying to fake it, forget it. Game over. It's only a matter of time. You may not feel it now. You may be able to carry on that facade for a while. But overall, this whole weekend had this authentic theme to it. And I think it's because when we kicked things off on Saturday, Mark had a great opening keynote that talked about authenticity. And it just hit everybody in a way that, even though, yeah, we hear that word thrown around all the time, sometimes very loosely, but it had a different feel to it in that room on that day. And I think it allowed everybody to realize that the people on stage, they were presenting in an authentic fashion. The conversations that were taking place out in the hallway or at lunch, those were all authentic conversations because everybody in the room was there for the same purpose, to gain real knowledge and real insight that would allow them to get to the next level. Authenticity may be a buzzword, but it's never going away. And you should never deviate from it. You should always think of the most authentic way to deliver your message, because if you don't, eventually, maybe even in that moment, you're going to get exposed. And when you get exposed, that's hard to come back from. Stay as authentic as possible, and you're going to stay engaged in everything that you're doing. That's a lesson I took away from this past weekend. So, a couple last things here before I wrap up this little recap episode of Let's Blow This Up. Back in 2021, and you want to talk about getting authentic. Back in 2021, I had an idea for a podcast, and I didn't run with it. And I went another way. I did Evolution of Brand, which you may or may not have listened to. That's a show I retired a couple years ago. And this idea, man, I'll tell you, this is the power of a double-edged sword. I'll share that. I love the idea, and I didn't run with it. And I've had some regrets about not running with it then when I could have. But having shared some conversations with people, and shared a very powerful story that's a part of my evolution with a few people, I have been 100% reignited to bring that podcast to life. When will I do this? Well, very soon. I'm not going to get into too much detail on this because I need to vet out a few ideas, but this one's going to be special. I talked about the double-edged sword. Yes, I could have started this in 2021, but I wouldn't have had the story that I'm going to tell when I kick off that show because it hadn't happened yet. So maybe that was the universe's way of telling me it was right to wait until 2025 or 2026, depending on how long it takes for everything to come together. You know, I'm a planner, so it's building out the strategy and recording a lot of conversations before I make this live. More than likely, it'll be out in season format. And I'll tell you, I had a couple other ideas that I was going to go with. Those are scrapped now. And I'll tell you real quick, one of them was it was going to be a case study on viral content. And the more I thought about it, I was like, this does not ignite me. I think it's cool, but it does not spark anything in me. So I scrapped that. And then another one was just something else. And I was like, that's not even worth talking about. So scrap that. This new podcast is where I need to be. So let's blow this up. Still happening. Don't think this show's going away. I'll still be doing series-based format here on Let's Blow This Up. The new show will be in season format. Cannot wait to roll that show out. But I want to thank the folks that I did share what I want to do that with, just to get some feedback. And I got to say, when I saw their reaction to the stories that I'm going to tell, I knew I had something. So I'm pumped to bring this out. So more on that in the near future. And last thing I want to say, actually two things. First, here's one thing I learned about myself. I am horrible at taking pictures. And I don't even look at it as a fault. I'm up here. When I am in these events, I am more about making a memory, having a conversation. I'm engrossed in that. It never hits me to stop and say, hey, let's take a picture. And I see all these great pictures that everybody's sharing. I'm like, son of a bitch. I kind of dropped the ball there. And maybe it's one of those things where it's not out of line to have your phone in your hand for this. Because for me, it's just my communication style. I want to be with the people I'm talking to, so my phone stays away. But I see all these people taking great pictures, and now they're being shared. I've got hardly any. But I know I was in a few. So this is my cry to the empowered podcasting community. If you're hearing this message and you have any pictures of me or us together, please send them my way. I just want to see what got taken and what I might have forgotten. I know there's a couple that I have had sent me. Oh, yeah, that's right. We took a picture together. That's how far from my mind it usually is. But nevertheless, if you have anything, please share it with me. Tag me on social media. Any account will work. I'll grab it from there. Please and thank you in advance. One last thing I'll wrap up here. And I would be remiss without saying thank you to Mark Ronick for, first of all, having this vision and having the patience to see it come to life. Mark mentioned it many times on his podcast on Monday where we recap the event. In his opening keynote, there are a lot of stressful moments where he questioned whether it made sense to even have the event. And being a part of that committee with him, I knew it was my responsibility to keep him as positive as I could, even if there were times where I had some negative vibes. We all were able to help each other. And Mark had this whole idea for this event a couple of years ago, and it's not easy to put these things together sometimes, but he stuck to it. He stayed true to his mission, and look what we have to show for it. So I want to thank Mark for having that vision and allowing me to be a part of it, allowing me to be a part of the committee to put this together. I don't think I speak for just myself when I say this, but I see a ton of potential for where this can go in 2026 and beyond. So stay tuned because we've got a lot more. We're just getting this party started. So big thank you to Mark. Big thank you to Andrea San Roman. Big thank you to Megan Shields, Rich Perry, Chris Lewis, Jonathan Howard, anybody that was on the planning committee, Nick Nalbach, anybody that was there that played a role in helping empowered podcasting come to life. It was great to work with you. It was great to have drinks and break bread with you while we were there. And as always, it was great to share knowledge and be in the room. I'll say one of the most crazy things that I did not see coming was after the after party, some of us ended up back at the hotel in one of the rooms starting the planning process for 2026, not officially, just all of a sudden, just bouncing ideas off one another. Where could it go? Where could it be? I was ready for bed after that party. It was a long day. You think about it. We started that day at 9:00, went till 5:30, and then the after party went till 10. I mean, that's a long day. And here we are. We're still sitting up, having some beers and kicking ideas around, getting ready to do this all over again. Are we crazy? You're damn right we're crazy, but it's crazy in a good way. So, Andrea, thank you for those conversations that night. And to David, your fiance, man, did we kick some good ideas around that I'm hoping we get to implement when we do this all over again. But to everybody that attended, if I was meeting you for the first time, or it was the first opportunity that I had to actually connect with you in person, or some people I met, I didn't even know I was connected to online. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. When they would bring that up, like, yeah, that's cool. We connected. We never really carried the conversation out there. Had a great opportunity to do that at this event as well. But thank you to everybody who made this special. I can't wait to run it back. It was so fun. That's really the best way I can say it. It was so fun and so rewarding, not just from the knowledge that was gained and the relationships that were built, but when you have an active role and your hands are in the dirt and you're molding this and you're trying to make something special, and you wonder, how's it going to go over with the crowd? How is everybody going to respond to what you do? And then you see it. That's a drug I will never want to come down from. That to me was that made all of the hard times worth it and all of the good times even better. Empowered Podcasting 2 is officially in the books. We look forward to Empowered Podcasting 3, but let's not forget the journey that we'll all be on together as we get to that event. We all have opportunities to connect. I've connected with so many people on social media over the last 2 days just because we had some type of connection at the event. We got a long way to go. Podcasting, to me, still young. Still so much potential in our space. And events like this are here to celebrate that, but ultimately here to make you better at what you do. So if you want to bring podcasting into your world for your business, as a hobby, as a method of thought leadership, communication, trust building, relationship building, there's so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to do it right. There are ways to do it wrong too. But let's focus on the good stuff. Let's focus on what you can do to have an impact in this space. And even if you're just getting started and feel like it's a little overwhelming, it probably is. But keep moving forward. I'm going to wrap this up and say, I think we're all empowered as a podcasting community, and it's up to us to continue pushing the good vibes and the good messaging forward. I plan to do that with everything I'm doing, and I look forward to collaborating with so many of you, so many people that I met that I'm going to get this opportunity to work with, to talk with, just to interact with online, even if it's just simple bravo for something you've accomplished. This community is going places. And I encourage you and invite you to be on the ride with us. So the first thing you can do, if you're not following me everywhere, hook up with me somewhere. But jump over to Empowered Podcasting on Facebook, join that page. In fact, I'll put the link in the show notes so you can get to it very easily. Tune into the podcasting morning chat, whether you tune in live or check out the podcast replay that goes out a few hours later. Get to know what's happening in this community, because I guarantee you, you are going to be hearing a lot about it going forward. The momentum that was gained from this weekend, it's hard to put it into words. So be part of it because you want to be in this community. I guarantee you that. And with that, That's going to bring down the curtain on this bonus episode of Let's Blow This Up, all about the 2025 Empowered Podcasting Conference. Until our paths cross again, I'm Jason Cercone, reminding you to stay explosive.